All right, let's talk about price hikes. We've been seeing price hikes all around us. Sunil Bharti Mittal wants to increase prices. The shortage of semiconductors is making sure prices are going up for consumer durables and for electronics. Obviously, fuel prices are not helping anybody and causing inflation as well. Well, let's add one more category to the mix, which will be cars. Now, Maruti Suzuki has already taken 2 hikes this year. The third will be coming in September, the company has announced in a corporate filing. And the reason is the same, high input costs. Let's go across first to my colleague Utkarsh for all the details.
Well, if you're really looking to buy a vehicle in this festive season, there are a lot of negatives there. One, the high waiting period. Second, we are told about lesser discounts. And now Maruti Suzuki has announced that they will be going ahead with one more price increase. This will be the 4th price increase by Maruti till this point of time. 3 already has been taken by the industry, and now we'll have to really wait and watch of how the industry responds. The way it happens generally is that given Maruti is the market leader, everybody really follows Maruti. So even at this point of time, many would be really preparing for a price hike, but will wait for the announcements of rates by Maruti and then will adjust their rates. That's how it happens in the industry for a very long time. Obviously, 4th price hike in year is something which is unprecedented. We haven't seen that. Generally, the first price hike happens in January, which is around 1%, and anything above 1% is actually seen circumstances where the prices are really high. But this time what has happened is that just before the festive season, when the discounts come in, when people want to lure customers, companies want to lure customers in the showroom, coming up with these kind of price hikes give you a sense of how bad the situation is when it comes to supply. Anyhow, because of the semiconductor situation, supply has been hit. Companies have been curtailing production. So this festive season will not be the festive season which we see every time, because the prices will be high, waiting periods will be high, and also no discounts this time. So we have to really wait and watch how does this festive season really pan out with these kind of situations.
Vinkesh Gulati, President of FADA, on the show with me this evening. Vinnie Mehta, DG of ACMA, on the show today, as is Gaurav Vangaal, Associate Director of IHS Markit. Welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us. Mr. Mehta, give us a sense of these input costs and why they have begun to pinch to this extent. We're just coming out of a pandemic where sales have been slow by all standards if you compare to pre-pandemic levels. For a car maker, and it's not just Maruti, others have hiked rates as well, to increase rates even as demand has not come up means it's a dire situation. How bad is it?
Tamanna, good evening to you. Thank you for having me, and it's good to see Vinkesh and Gaurav together with me, friends. I cannot comment upon what the vehicle manufacturers are doing. I think Vinkesh is best to respond to it, but I can give you a sense on the inputs. You see, clearly there are 3 strong headwinds that the industry is encountering. Utkarsh covered some of those. The raw material prices have been going up for last 1 year. Steel has gone up 30%, copper by 60%, a whole host of commodities are going up, and there is no relenting. It's a huge concern for the entire industry. You mentioned about the semiconductor shortages. We do not see any resolution in 2022. Maybe it will run up to 2023. Okay. The other big issue is on the front of containers not being available, high logistics costs, all of this factored in together. And of course, the fuel prices aren't making it any better for the customer. So all taken together, on one hand, the input costs are going up and other factors of consumption are not very conducive. So it is definitely very challenging for the industry. The only silver lining that remains is that, the Indian consumer is an amazing consumer. The demand remains. We just hope that it remains such. So, Tamanna, this is what I would say as an initial comment. Thank you for having me.
Vinkesh, that same question to you. Was there no other way? Do automakers now have absolutely no choices? And do you see the increase in prices dampening demand during the festive season?
So, evening, Tamanna. Thanks for having me. No doubt, this price increase always dampens demand. So, the customers who are already in touch with the dealership, who have already booked the vehicle, they get a shock, even if the price hike is maybe 0.5% or anything. Even 500 rupees is a shock to them because they've already planned the vehicle to buy the vehicle. So, that is where the problem is. But overall, I feel as of today, yes. As Vinny said, that the situation of input cost increasing due to COVID and all the external reasons is there, and the manufacturers are forced to pass on the prices, increase the price, and over and above this, semiconductor is also becoming a bigger issue. So lately, like if you see, the production has gone down for Maruti badly, and that had been because of the chip shortage from the Malaysia lockdowns happening. So the ABS chips are not available. So Maruti, which was still insulated till for so long because of from the semiconductor shortage, is now getting affected. And if I talk on the demand side, we are happy, we are lucky that passenger vehicle being the personal mobility interest of the customers, the demand is still positive, and there is a big waiting period of many fast moving vehicles starting from 2 months to Mahindra Thar and year or so. So I feel in a short term, the demand would not be a problem for us. But if this continues long, yes, then maybe it will affect the retail happening and the numbers happening.
Gaurav, do you think that's a safe bet? That right now, because there is a long waiting period, because there is possibly pent-up demand coming in, that the price hike will be absorbed. Though important to note that all of the input cost hike has not been passed on to the customer yet. We spoke with Maruti earlier in the day. We had an exclusive interview with them, and they're very clear that it's not all gone to the customer yet. Not all of it has been even passed on yet. So there may be more in the offing then.
Gaurav, you're on mute.
See, the one thing is very clear from last 1.5 years. Owning the car, running the car, and maintaining the car is getting expensive. Reason can be anything, whether it is a regulation, whether it's a taxation, whether it's a technology upgradation, whether it is a court's verdict. Okay, everything has been passed on to the consumer till date. And very well said by you just now that this has been absorbed by consumer. When we see the demand in the market, as Mr. Gulati has just mentioned, that when we see the demand in the market, it's very strong. And every cost burden has been taken by the consumer very well. And we think that this is not going to impact the demand because we are already suffering with the supply side and there's a gap. And consumer will going to pay extra for it. And other car makers are also going to follow this, follow the price hikes, what has been done by Maruti Suzuki.
You know, there is demand right now, but can it sustain is the question. Gaurav, let me ask you a follow-up. Do you see the input cost pressure going down? In the beginning of the conversation, Mr. Mehta talked about how there was a massive increase in steel prices. Semiconductor will not resolve itself by 2023. So is this just the first in a series of hikes that we're probably seeing?
Series of hikes has been already started, and I think that this is going to discourage demand at one point of time. Till the time we have vacuum between supply and demand, I think there's a gap. When this demand gets fulfilled, I think from that point we will start facing the issues from the demand, and because of the price increases, the affordability, what I think recently has been mentioned by Mr. Bhargav, that affordability is impacting, and this is going to continue, I think, but it depends on segment to segment, definitely. Affordability towards the small cars is a major concern, but affordability towards SUVs, I think SUV owners are still absorbing the price hikes.
Yeah, you know, in fact, you're talking about what Mr. Bhargav said recently last week at a CM meet, where he talked about the industry being seeing slower growth in the last 18 months. And I'm quoting from what he said. There have been a lot of statements about the importance of the automobile industry, but in terms of concrete action which would reverse the decline, I haven't seen any action on the ground. I don't think the car industry would revive either with ICEs or with CNG, biofuels or EVs unless we address the question of affordability of cars for the consumers. In fact, Mr. Venu Srinivasan said the basic mode of transportation in the country is being taxed at 28% GST, equal to that of a luxury product. He questioned whether that was fair. So these are serious concerns that car makers are now communicating to the government and the public at large. Mr. Mehta, give us a sense of where the pressure points are. If it keeps getting so expensive to own and run a car, fuel prices are also, really pinching consumers now. Will this be sustainable?
So, Tamanna, that's I think, question, very serious question. And I think everybody needs to think through it very, very carefully, because if you see, the automotive industry is something, a very significant driver of the Indian economy. It contributes about 7% of the overall GDP. It accounts for close to 37.5 million jobs, and if the auto industry were to literally flounder, it's going to be a serious question mark for the entire economy. So one has to make sure that this economic engine keeps running. It's very important for the whole country. And I think all the questions that were raised at the SIAM session or the FADA session or the ACMA session by the industry leaders are very, very relevant. And in fact, the Revenue Secretary did acknowledge that the car industry is something that is very highly taxed, and I guess if you are acknowledging, then we expect an action, because at the end of the day, you wouldn't want the industry to wither away. The industry is as such facing a lot of problems, and Mr. Bhargav very well pointed out that in the first decade of the 2000, that is from 2000 to 2010, the growth rate, the cumulative growth rate was very high, and then from 2010 to 2020, it's really come down. So it's a huge question mark. We're growing at around 1.3% or something like that. So I guess that is something very, very serious. And at the end of the day, if an industry is not growing at the rate of the GDP, at least we would aspire to grow at the rate of the GDP to at least be contributing meaningfully to it. What is 1.3% growth? I guess the policymakers really need to take a look at it very, very seriously, because an entire ecosystem depends on it, whether it is the component manufacturers or whether it is the dealers. So we need to make sure that the demand is sustained. That's very, very critical.
In the middle of this, Vinkesh, we keep hearing that numbers are getting better, but the comparison is always with the beginning of 2020, after the pandemic hit. Do you think that that is the right way to look at whether cars are being sold and that demand has returned? Would you give us a picture of what happens if we start comparing to 2019 December, or maybe the beginning of 2019 or even 2018 in terms of demand?
So Tamanna, practically, if you want to know my wish, I'll always compare it from 2018 and 19, which was one of the best times of auto. But seeing the current situation where still you are seeing how Kerala and Tamil Nadu or Karnataka COVID cases are, and opening restrictions and all that. So still a long time to go. But one thing is very clear, at least car industry is growing year on year. So last year also, the pandemic year. And in some months, we are seeing similar figures of 2019 also. So this overall is a positive sense. So if I talk about the overall industry, we are still lagging around 30%, but especially for passenger vehicle segment, we are on the right track. But these kinds of disruptions what are happening, like Vinnie said, the input cost going up, the semiconductor issues coming on, this we can, as a customer, as a dealer, we can sustain for a smaller time, or a month or two. We've already been in this since around a year or 6 months, if you count out the semiconductor one. If this goes on again, the interest of a customer to buy a car or move on a car will wither down, and that is a problem. once the interest goes down, getting that same percentage or the hype of demand is very difficult post-pandemic. So that as an FAD or as a dealer, I expect that whatever issues Vinnie is saying, like ACMA has, component manufacturers or the manufacturers have, it should be in control in maximum month or two, so that when we enter the festive, which is just 2 months from now, we at least have some reasonable stock. I know within 2 months we'll not be carrying the inventory what normally we used to do 2 years back. But still, if it is still reasonable, we can handle the customer's demand, and with the kind of waiting period happening, we can consider and manage things well.
Yeah, well, all eyes on the festive season. It's a very important time of the year for those in the auto industry, and to have this spanner in the works, rising input costs, having to increase, prices, and this possibly is not the last of those price hikes, and long waiting periods doesn't make for a good, conducive environment to really boost sales during the festive season. So we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the show this evening.